Shri Guru Shijuta Pada Kamalang Shri Guru Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Shakara Jatam Shahakana Raganatam Itam Shajivam Sadvaitam Shavadutam Parijana Shaitam Krishna Chaitana Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lalita Shibishakam Vitangscha Mantra Guru Ajota Shika Guru Ganta Charane Age Korya Bandhan Vanchakalpa Turubhyashta Kripashin Devebacha Podidanam Babaneva Vaishnava Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shamate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharni Nirvishishya Shannavari Paschatta Desha Tarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Sri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Binda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Projita Kaitava Atra Paramanya Namatsanam Satam Vinosham Ashtavatrushi Vedam Tapatrai Unmulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamune Krite King Vaipara Ishvara Saddha Ridi Avaruddhate Atra Kriti Vishu Shushivitakshanat. Anyata Purna Kamasya Kaivalyadya Shinam Pate Ishitabhyai Kim Ashmabhir Ishashyaita Dvidambanam Anyata Purna Kamasya Kaivalyadya Shishampate Ishitabhyai Kimashmabhir Ishashaita Dvidambanam. Vaishnavis. Anyata, otherwise. Purnakamasya, of him whose every possible desire is fulfilled. Kaivalya, of liberation. Adi, and others. Ashisham, benedictions. Pate, the master. Ishitabhyahai, with those who are meant to be controlled. Kim, what? Ashmabhi, with us. Ishasha, of him who is the absolute controller. Etat, this. Vidambhanam, pretense. Text 45 also requires to be read. 40. Translation, text 45. Indeed, infatuated as we are with our household affairs, we have deviated completely from the real aim of our life. But now, just see how the Lord, through the words of these simple cowherd boys, has reminded us of the ultimate destination of all true transcendentalists. Text 46. Otherwise, why would the Supreme Controller, whose every desire is already fulfilled, and who is the Master of liberation and all other transcendental benedictions, enact this pretense with us, who are always to be controlled by him? Purport by the followers of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Although Lord Krishna is the absolute truth, he humbly sent his cowherd boyfriends to beg food from the Brahmins. In so doing, he exposed the Brahmins' foolish arrogance and established the glories of his own transcendental beauty by attracting their wives to surrender unto his lotus feet. Mukam karati bachalam bhangam alanga ete girim jat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurun dinatarinam. The simple cowherd boys have reminded us of the ultimate destination. Exposed the Brahmanas' foolish arrogance and ignorance. These Brahmins, they were engaged in the ritualistic, fruitive activities which are described in the Vedas for elevation to the heavenly planets. As the text 45 explains, being infatuated with material life, being infatuated with household affairs. Pramatanam grihayaya. Completely absorbed. And thinking that the Vedic wisdom is meant to give us prosperity in life. This is discussed by Bhagavan Sri Krishna in Gita, 2nd chapter. He's explaining to Arjuna, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, the avipashchitaha, without discrimination. They're attached to the pushpatam vadam, the flowery words of the Vedas, Vedavadarata, attached to the Vedas, and all of the rituals for increasing enjoyment in this material world. And Krishna is minimizing this approach. Trigunna Vishaya Veda Nishtragunna Bhava Arjuna. That the Vedas, Trigunna Vishaya Veda, the Vedas are dealing with the Trigunna, the three modes of material nature, and how to enjoy in the legal way. It's called Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda means legal sense enjoyment, which will not produce sinful reaction. And it is involved in helping you enjoy the three modes of material nature in a legal way, as distinct from bikarma. Bikarma means unregulated sense enjoyment, which produces sinful activity, pap. So we see that most people are engaged in the bikarma. Because even Prabhupada explains in the purports to Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter that the karma kanda, the Vedic ritualistic process, cannot properly be followed in the Kali Yuga. because the Brahmins are not sufficiently purified, not sufficiently qualified. Their chanting of the mantras is the karma kanda division cannot properly be followed in the Kali Yuga. So even those who, and there may be some piety, but generally people are engaged in sinful activity. I mean, what they're eating. Who's eating Jagya Shishta? So-called pious religious people, who's eating Jagya Shishta? They're not eating Jagya Shishta. They're eating for their Atmakaranat, Bunjate Taitagam Papam, grievous sins, because whatever, even may even be vegetarian. Bunjate Taitagam Papam, Yai Pachanti Atmakaranat. But if they're cooking for themselves or their family members and not cooking for the Lord, that's sinful. That's sinful. Vikarma. Everyone is on the platform of Vikarma. And in Bhagavad Gita, actually Krishna, in the 3rd chapter, he actually recommends the performance of the Vedic injunctions, of the Vedic rituals. Krishna recommends in 3rd chapter, Bhagavad Gita. In fact, Krishna says that Aghayur Indriya Rama Mokha Partha Shajibati. If you're not performing sacrifices to please the demigods, then Jo Bungte Eva Shtena Shaha, you're a thief. Because you're enjoying all of the provisions which are given by the devotas, Devata, they're providing the air that we breathe, the rainfall, Jagya Bhavati Parjanad, from sacrifice rain comes. Foolishly we're thinking that food comes from the supermarket, the mall, the shopping mall, or even the shabji wala. But actually it comes from performance of sacrifice, jagya, which produces rain. So if you're simply taking the fruits, vegetables, eating, not performing jagya, then you're a thief. A thief. So Krishna says that such a life of the chore, the thief, such a life, Aghayur is full of sin, a sinful life, Indriya Ramo, just for the satisfaction of the senses. Mogha Partha Sajivite, this is, one's life is destroyed. However, this is forgotten. At best, people are thinking religiousness means performing rituals to the demi, at best. But in general, you won't find in the academies of learning, where the so-called learned philosophers and professors, you will not find them teaching you how to even teaching you how to pay your debts to the demigods. You won't even find in the colleges of advanced learning teaching you how you're accountable for everything you're utilizing provided by material nature, and you have to pay your debts. You won't even find this subject discussed. This is the degraded circumstances we find ourselves in the modern so-called advanced civilization. And when the topic of appeasing the demigods, when the topic comes up, then it is minimized with the term of mythology. Mythology. However, even the Bhagavad Gita alone will cause confusion. Even Bhagavad Gita alone, as Krishna is recommending, the demigods, you have to pay your debts to the demigods. So therefore, Vyas Muni, he comes and chastises, Narad Muni, Sri Narad, he comes and chastises Vyasadeva, that actually you've compromised with the people in general. Because of their propensity to enjoy, and so considering that, you've made a compromise, so you've given them facility for legal enjoyment. And this they think is the purpose of life, at best. I'm a pious person, I'm a religious person, I go to the temple, I pray to the gods, I get from my prosperity. At best, this is what people are, they're confused, just like these Brahmins, they're completely forgotten. And these simple cowherd boys have reminded us of the ultimate destination of true transcendental. Vedascha Sharve Aham Eba Bedyo. Vedascha Sharve, of all the Vedas, Aham Eba Beddo. I am meant to be known. But people are thinking that the Vedas are meant for ensuring my happiness in this world and happiness in the next life. So Narad Muni, he's chastising Vyasadeva because you have actually encouraged this. Traigunna Vishaya Veda, because you've predominantly provided so much information on how to appease the demigods and the different rituals, karma kanda, asram dharma, varna dharma. And in this way, people think that this is the purpose of life and religion is meant for this. Prabhupada gives an analogy in this connection, reflecting Sri Narad Muni's chastisement of Vyas, that the expert physician does not prescribe to the patient those things, even in a regulated way, which should not be taken at all. Even in a regulated way, which is what Vyas Muni has done. The enjoying spirit remains. We see that this because of the propensity that people have to enjoy, and this compromises the Brahminical class and the so-called it compromised Vyas Muni. What to speak of the Brahmins in general? I once stumbled upon a website where they were advertising. It was a mott in Dakshin Bharat, South India, a mott, and was advertising the quality of the Jati Goshais, the seminal Brahmins that were in their organization. And they had their pictures and the different seminal lineage. And they were big, healthy-looking fellows, very healthy. Earrings and tilak and beards. And our pure Brahmins are there. And then on the web page, you could see all of the different objectives to fulfill your desires. You can find a suitable wife. Click here. To vanquish your enemies, click here. To overcome financial difficulties, click here. To extricate yourself from legal problems, click here. To remove disease, click here. And you click, and then it goes to the various information on the jagya, which will be performed by our highly qualified Brahmins. Key in your debit or credit card, both are acceptable, plus PayPal. So this is not this is not effective. Yadricha labha shantushto. Krishna explains the qualification of the qualified Brahmins is that they're satisfied with what comes, yadricha labha, with what comes of its own accord, without request. In this case, demanding. Before you do the yajna, you have to pay. Before we do the yajna, you have to pay. So this is compromise of Brahminical standards. The motivation of the elevated Brahmins is to enlighten the people, to provide for them the guidance whereby they can perfect their lives. That's what a Brahmin means. Actually, when our preaching, we were preaching in Indonesia, we still have difficulties there in Indonesia, Bali, these countries, even though they are Hindu countries. We have difficulty there because the Brahmin class felt threatened by ISKCON's presence and ISKCON's preaching. Because ISKCON was preaching, you chant the Hare Krishna, distributing Prabhupada's books. What is that? Karmani niddhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. You chant Hare Krishna, all of your sinful activities are destroyed. The Brahmin class were out of work. Their interest is that the people remain on this materialistic platform, on the sinful platform, so that the Brahmins can be engaged to perform the prayashchitta, to relieve them of the sinful activities. And when ISKCON came along, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, chanting on the holy name in the streets, delivering Dinna Hinna Jotto Chilo Hariname Utharelo, They made so much pressure toward the government to ban ISKCON. We want the people to remain in ignorance. We want them to remain materialistic so that they're dependent upon us to perform yagyas. So this is this propensity to compromise, to satisfy the demands of the materialistic people rather than actually take the task of enlightening them. I visited, one time I visited Chennai, Belur, Christian Medical College in Vellore, CMC. It is very famous. It is particularly famous in Gaudadesh, amongst the Bengali class. Any disease, any problem, Vellore will solve all of you. You have to go to Vellore. And you go there, and then there's a class of translators, especially specialized Bengali translators there to translate for all the Bengali people who go there for their diseases. So in the reception, they have a big picture. It's a Christian college, a Christian medical college. They have a big picture of Jesus curing the sick. Jesus Christ curing the sick. He cured the sick. He's a great Vaishnav. He had the potency and compassionate. He relieved. Satyananda and Gaudhari also cured the leper. Vasudev. It's a simple thing. But that is not actually the purpose of the avatar. Kali Juge, Juga Dharma, Namera Prochar, Toti Lage, Pita Borna Chaitanya Avatar. Juga Dharma Namera Prochar. That is the purpose. Not just to cure the sick. But this because many customers will come, many sick people, many diseased people. So you tried this medicine, you tried Apollo, you tried Bellevue, now try Jesus. He can cure you of your diseases. So this becomes the interest and the motivation rather than the actual teachings to give your heart to love God. So even Gita, without Prabhupada's purports, even Gita, people are confused. They're thinking Bhagavad Shreya Swadharma perform the Vedic rituals. Even Bhagavad Gita. Well, therefore, Narad Muni, he induced, in the very beginning, he's addressing this compromised spirit of Vyas Muni. Dharma sva anushtita punksha bishvakshena kota no utpadaye jati ratim shama evahi kevalam. That dharma sva anushtita punksha, even a person is dharma sva, their prescribed duties, anushtita, perfectly following, na utpadayed jati ratim bishvakshena kota. If there is no production, na utpadayed jati ratim bishvakshena kota. If there is no utpad, awakening of the roti, attachment for the vishvakshena kota, hearing the Lord and serving the Lord, Bhagavat Marg is the Shravan Ponta. Just by hearing Bhagavatam, we serve the Lord. Just by hearing. And that Narad Muni is chastising Vyas. Just write one book, which is simply glorifying the Lord. And that is Srimad Bhagavatam. And just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhakti Bhavati Noishtiki. The actual purpose of awakening your love for God and solving the problem. We're thinking I'm the enjoyer and God is my desire supplier. This is compromised, although it appears to be religion. The very second verse, Dharma projita kaitava atra. Dharma projita kaitava dharma. The so-called religion which looks like religious, it is projita, it is completely rejected in Srimad Bhagavatam. Such activities, dharma sva anushtita vishvakshena kotaya na utpade yadi radnim shrama eva hi kevalam. Narad Bhagavatam in the very beginning is explaining that this is a waste of time. This is simply misspent effort. Shrama eva hi kevalam. It is simply a waste of your energy. And Narad Muni goes on to very emphatically explain to Vyas, Ko varta aptam abhajatam sadharma. Even if you're perfectly performing all of your religious duties in terms of your specific occupation, the ashram, the varna, etc. Ko varta aptam. What is the gain in perfectly following your prescribed duties? Kovarta aptam abhajatam sadama, if it is devoid of the devotional service of the Lord. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam, that just by sitting and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we're engaged in our constitutional position as the servant of the Lord. And just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we can attain the ultimate perfection, as Shukdev Goswami is exemplary. He sat and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and fully awakened his love of God. Just by hearing Srimad Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte, as simplified in the teachings of Gauranga Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, Shravanadi, based on hearing, Shuddha Chitte, the heart becomes purified. Koraya Udoy, and the love of God at Udoy, it arouses just like the sun. You cannot stop it. You cannot stop it. Sri Gauda Modhulila Jar Korne Probeshila Redor Nirmal Bhelotar. Just by hearing the Sri Gauda Modhulila, the sweet pastimes of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Jar Korne Probeshila, those whose ears they enter into, Redor Nirmal Bhelotar, the heart becomes completely purified. Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Sridhanta Shastri Thakur, in his commentary on Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, he explains that Sri Satyananda is going to Gaya Dham to perform the ritual ceremony according to the Karma Kanda of the oblations offered for the forefathers after the demise of Jagannath Mishra. Sri Sridhanta Shastri Thakur comments that this was to bewilder the compromised Smarta and Brahminical class. And upon arriving, Mahaprabhu, just as here, that the Vedic Brahmins who have forgotten the actual purpose of the Vedas and thinking that the rituals are meant for the elevation to heaven, and as the simple cowherd boys who came requesting the prasadam, and then seeing the awakening of love of God and the attachment that the Brahmanis, the Dvijapatnis had for Sri Krishna, and for seeing Sri Krishna and for serving Sri Krishna, these Brahmins actually understood. So similarly, Mahaprabhu taught the same lesson in going to Gaya Dham, apparently with the intention of performing the Karmakanda rituals of the oblations offered to the forefathers. Actually, the Bhagavat explains that Devashi Bhutaptanrinam Pitrinam Na Kinkano Nayam Ranicha Rajan, that those who are engaged in the service of the Lord, automatically all of their debts to their forefathers are automatically fulfilled just by Bhagavad Bhakti. Shraddha Shabje Bishwash Kohe Shudrida Nishchoy Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Krishna Bhakti Koile, devotion to Krishna, Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. All of your prescribed duties are automatically performed just by Bhagavad Bhakti. So upon arriving in Gaya Dham at that time, by the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, present there was Srila Ishara Puri Prabhupada, who subsequently became the mantra guru of Sri Satyananda. And upon seeing him, Mahaprabhu explained that now I have seeing your lotus feet, my visit to Gaya Dham has become successful. Because oblations offered in the holy place, they can only be beneficial for the specific names mentioned. If you've been to Gaya Dham, actually I met Narottam Priya Prabhu in Gaya Dham many years ago. And Chaitanya Avatar Prabhu, we were there in Gaya Dham. And we also performed the offering of oblations to the forefathers. And many Brahmins are there. And even the foreigners, they're happy to do. All day they're sitting there doing the Shraddha ceremony. And then they'll ask you, yes, list all the names of all the people. Your father, your grandfather, anyone, uncle, they're quite happy to include any names that you like. So Mahaprabhu is explaining that such oblations are only beneficial for the recipients who are mentioned in the procedures. However, Tomar dekele matro koti pindragon sheikone sharva bandha paya bimochan, just by seeing you, Mahaprabhu says to Ishwar Puri, just by seeing you, Tomar dekile matro, just by seeing you, koti pitragon, thousands, koti, crores and crores of forefathers, sheikone sarva bandha paya vimochan, they are delivered from all bondage just by seeing you. And then Mahaprabhu returning from Gayadam, similarly, returning. He's just like the behavior of the Dvijapatnis, whose demonstration and manifestation of the inflamed love of Krishna, it impressed, it changed the minds of the ritualistic Brahmins. So similarly, upon returning from Gayadam, Mahaprabhu's having received the mercy of Srila Ishwar Puri, Prabhupada, and taken his darshan and been pure, labamatra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. Labamatra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. Just a moment's association with the sadhu can bestow upon you all perfection. Mahaprabhu returned from Gayadam and he was a changed person. A changed person. Of course, this is Leela. But prior to his trip to Gayadam, Mahaprabhu was absorbed in the Biddarosh. Biddarosh. Chatodik hoite lok, Nabadipe jai, Nabadipe porile, she Biddarosh pai. The scholars from all over Bharat Bhumi converged upon Navadip Dham to study under Nimai Pandit. Because Navadipe porile, she Biddarosh pai. In Navadip, if you study, you will get a taste for learning. And the Dijamani, the crest jewel of the Navadip Brahmins, Satyananda, he would defeat, on the ghats of Navadip, he would defeat all of the Brahmins who they would come and they would challenge. He defeated the Digbijai, and in this way he enjoyed the Biddarosh in Navadip Dham. So returning from Navadip, all of his students were sitting there, they were awaiting him, they were awaiting. Just waiting. Could you imagine that every day you were Vyakaran Shastriya, Ekanta Tattvit, you were studying the grammar and Alankar from Nimai Pandit? You wouldn't be late for those classes. Actually, Vrindavandas Thakur explains they're all Nitya Siddha. They're all eternal associates of the Lord that appeared just to enjoy pastimes, being the students of. And sometimes he would chastise. You've come to class without the tilak, go home. Go home. So upon returning from Navadip, he sat down to give the class. He was a changed person. A changed person. Agama Vedanta Adi Jota Darshan Sarva Shastre Kohe Krishna Pade Bhakti Dhan. The Agamas, the Vedanta, all of the different departments of the Vedas, the Vyakaran, Alanka, Jota Darshan, all of the different philosophies Mahaprabhu was teaching. Sarva Shastre Kohe, he's saying that Sarva Shastre Kohe, Krishna Pade Bhakti Dhan, is giving devotion, is recommending devotion to the lotus feet of Krishna. So hearing this changed person, that every question they asked about the grammar, about the verbal roots, Mahaprabhu would simply explain Krishna Pade Bhakti Dhan. Lotus, the devotion to the lotus feet of Krishna, Sarva Shastra Kohe. This is the conclusion of all the scriptures. The students were a little bewildered, so following the proper etiquette, they approached the authority. They didn't just start blaspheming on the Facebook page. They approached the authority, Gangadas Pandit, and they said, Nimai is a changed person. It was so wonderful. We were studying, and he would connect all the verbal roots, and his commentaries were astounding. But now he cannot speak anything about the glories of Krishna and love of Krishna and Krishna's name and Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's form. He's always chanting the name of Krishna. His hairs stand on end. Sometimes he laughs. Sometimes he shouts. He manifests different moods. He falls on the ground. Tell us, what can we do? And Gangadas Pandit said, Tikai. He didn't say Tikai, he said Tikache. He said, okay, I will speak to Nimai. So then Nimai came to see his guru, Gangadas Pandit. Guru Chaurane Dhuli Prabhu Lai Shidei Bid Labho Guru Ashirvad Kore. Seeing his spiritual master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took the dust of his feet on his head. Guru Chauran Dhuli Prabhu Lai Shidei Bid Labho Guru Ashirvad Kore. And Gangadas Pandit gave him blessing. Bid Labho, become learned. Then Gangadas Pandit began to explain that your father, he's a great Pandit, Jagadan Mishra, he's a learned scholar. He's a devotee. your maternal grandfather, Nilambar Chakravarti, he's a renowned scholar, expert in the Jyotish Shastra. Nilambar Chakravarti, he performed the Jyotish reading at the time of Satyananda's appearance. He's a great scholar. He's a devotee. So you can be, yes, we're very pleased that you have become a devotee, but you carry on with your dharma as a pandit, as a Brahmin, and you teach the Shastra, and you teach the Sanskrit, you teach the poetry, you teach the grammar, and you can serve Krishna. And hearing this, Nimai was very appreciative. Oh, Guruji, thank you. You have advised me so with such wisdom. And taking the dust of the lotus feet of Gangadas Pandit, Nimai went. And again, he returned to his studies, to his teaching. And he was walking to the banks of the Ganga, surrounded by his students. And he appeared like the shining moon against the velvet firmament of the dark sky, surrounded by stars of his students, as he strolled to the banks of the Ganga. In the evening, the class was held in the evening. Perhaps this was Goram Kal, the summertime, too hot in the day. And in the evening, he would sit on the banks of the Ganga with the moonrise visible in the dark blue and dark sky. And the students would sit around him. Perhaps there were lamps. And the dhupkati for the mosquitoes. This is culture. This is Navadip Dham. Actually, Nitya Lila, Satyananda is still sitting in the Birashan on the banks of Ganga and discussing with his students. Nitya Lila is always going on. So then he began, and again espousing his commentaries, he's connecting the different verbal roots, explaining the grammar, and the students were astounded. They sat there, their mouths agape. Listening to his learning. Emon Pandit Deki Nai. They'd never seen such learning in Nimai Pandit. Joto Bakko Gangadas Pandit Koren Shukrit Shunile Matro Tako Doren. Whatever Gangadas Pandit said, Joto Bakko Gangadas Pandit Koren, whatever he said, Sukrit Shunile Matro, hearing it once, Thakur Doren. Satyanandan would remember that. Such learning. And Gangadas Pandit, what a Pandit. Vyakaran Shastrer Ekanta Tattabit. The most learned in the Shastras of the grammar. And whatever he taught to Nimai remembered. Such learning, such scholarship. And the students were they were so happy. Nimai, he's back. Nimai is back. Yes, he's going to challenge all the pundits. He's going to embarrass them. We'll be laughing and sniggering when he exposes all of their faulty commentaries. So just at that time, there was one Brahmin. His name was Ratnagarbha Acharya, who was very fond of Srimad Bhagavatam. And his kutir was just on the banks of Ganga. So in the evening time, he was sitting in the door, just in the door, he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Mandali. It is very interesting what verse he was reciting. Shall I share with you? The wives. He was reading from 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 23. The wives of the Jagit Brahmins saw a beautiful young boy. His complexion was darkish. He wore a golden yellow cloth. He was nicely decorated with flower garlands around his neck. A peacock feather slanted sideways out of his crown. Actually, Balaram, he went first to the Brahmins and they completely ignored him. Because we all desire that after your training is complete, you go to the four corners of the world and become a true follower of Srila Prabhupada. Bharat Bhumiti Hoila Manusha Janamajar, Janmashatak Kore Para Upakar, and you do welfare for the humanity in the foreign countries, like Srila Prabhupada did. And if you get a chance to go to Hong Kong or China or Taiwan for Sankirtan, you'll find the people there, they completely ignore you. Not like at least in the other places, the people, at least they acknowledge you. No, not interested. But there they did like you don't exist. You walk into the office, they're just there. completely, you don't exist. They're very difficult to even get their attention. So these Brahmins, they completely ignored Balaram. They completely give us some prasad. Where the cowherd boys were hungry. Now we can accept before the forbidden items are performed. Give us some prasadam. And they completely ignored. And then came back to Krishna. Oh, nothing. They completely ignored us. And Krishna said, now you go to the wives. They're great devotees. So immediately seeing Balaram, that Krishna and Balaram were in the forest, the cowherd boys were hungry. Immediately the devoted Dvijapatnis, they were gathering the items, the sweets, the savories, the pakoras, the kochuris, the rasgullas, the ladus, and putting into containers. And the cowherd boys were ready to collect and go. And they said, no, this is not parcel service. No, we will go. We want to see Nandanandan. We want to see Nandadulal. So upon arriving into the groves of the forest, where on the banks of the Jamuna, where Nandadulal and Balaramji had gathered with the cowherd boys for their pastimes, and the wives of the Brahmins, they arrived and they saw Nandadulal. And this is the description. And this is the verse that Ratnagarbha Acharya was speaking at that time on the bank of the Ganga. Bhagavatam is describing, he was with his friends. He stood leaning against a dear friend, his left hand on his shoulder, and with his right hand he twirled a beautiful lotus flower. His ears were decorated with earrings in the shape of lotus flowers. His cheeks carried decorative signs of sandalwood paste, and a sweet smile played upon his lotus-like mouth. So when the sound of this Bhagavat verse, when it entered the ears of Dvijamani, he immediately, again, he forgot everything about learning and about grammar and about scholarship. He fell unconscious hearing the verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, of this Leela. He fell unconscious. For an extensive period of time, he was lying there shivering, horripilating, crying, tears flowing from his eyes, like Ma Ganga herself flowing at Haridwar Rishikesh. And then Satyananda, he came to consciousness. He ran towards that Brahman, Ratnagarbha Acharya. He ran. He embraced him. Paya Vaikuntha Nayake Alingan. Paya Vaikuntha Nayake Alingan, being embraced by the Vaikuntha Nayak. Prem Purna Ratnagarbha Hoile Tokon. Prem Purna Ratnagarbha. He was overwhelmed with love of Godhead, being embraced by Dvijamani at that time. And then after that, he went back, Mahaprabhu, again trying to give the class. All he could say to the students, Bolo Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Shuno Krishna Nam, Aha Nisha, Sri Krishna Charan Koro Dhyan. Chant Krishna's name, worship Krishna, hear Krishna's name. Aha Nisha, night and day, Sri Krishna Charan Koro Dhyan. Night and day, meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna Mata, Krishna is your mother. Krishna Pita, Krishna is your father. Krishna Pranadhan, Krishna is your life. Krishna is your wealth. Charane Dhariya Boli, Krishna Dehomon. Charane Dhariya Boli, holding the feet of his students, begging his students. Charane Dhariya Boli, Krishna Dehomon. Give your mind to Krishna. So then Mahaprabhu explained, apologies, dukkito, I'm sorry, I cannot carry on teaching you. And they're explaining that you haven't been following the standard curriculum for many days. Mahaprabhu apologized, I'm sorry, I apologize. I cannot speak anything else because I'm always seeing this bluish form of this boy. Bangshidhari, upon returning from Gaya at Kanai Natashala, Sri Krishna Bal Gopal appeared to Mahaprabhu because he is that Prabhu. He is but Bhakta Rupa. in the form of a devotee. The Lord appeared to him, Krishna appeared to him. I'm always seeing that bluish form. And so therefore I cannot speak anything else. Krishna Barna ek Shishu, Murali Bhajai. Krishna Barna, darkish color. Ek Shishu, one boy, one child, ek Shishu. Murali Bhajai, playing the flute. Shob Deki, Tai Bai, Boli Sharbatai. All the time I'm seeing him. Tai Boli Sharbai, Tai Boli Sharbatai. So, brothers, I cannot do anything but speak about him. And then Gauranga, he tied his books and said, you can go find another teacher. And the students, find another teacher? After having you as our teacher, now you're expecting us to find another teacher? How could we sit in another's class after being your students? You will not teach anymore? We will not study anymore. And the students also closed their books and tied them in a cloth. And then they asked, Shishyagon bolen, kemon sankirtan? Apani shikayen Prabhu Shishachinandan, kemon sankirtan? The students, they asked, kemon sankirtan? How to do this sankirtan? Please teach us. Apani shikayen Prabhu Shishachinandan. You please teach us how to do this sankirtan. And then Mahaprabhu, taking his students with him, he began to teach them. And what did he teach them? It's very interesting. He taught them to chant, Hadaya Nama Krishna, Yadhabaya Namaha, Gopal Govindaram, Sri Madhusudan. He taught them to chant this mantra, Kemon Sankirtan. And in this way, he induced his students to also become the participants in the Sankirtan movement. And his students, they gave up their materialistic life and joined Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan party. And hearing this kirtan on the banks of the Ganga, performed by Shachi Dulal and his students, the sound of the kirtan, it reverberated throughout Nadia. Parama Shantosh Shab Hoilo Antare. Hearing this kirtan, the Vaishnavas in Navadip, Parama Shantosh Shab Hoilo Antare. They all became extremely satisfied within. Ebe Shi Kirtan Hoilo Anodio Nagare. Witnessing the beginning of Sri Sachinandan's Sankirtan pastimes in Navadip Dham. So in this way, Mahaprabhu's journey to Gaya and return and his inauguration of the Sankirtan movement reflects the principles of today's verse, where the ritualistic Brahmins are appreciating the manifested love of Godhead of the Dvija Patnis and understanding their foolishness in being enamored by the Vedic rituals and the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. Is there any question on today's topic?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much for a very wonderful class. So in the beginning you were mentioning about how the today's universities and colleges, no one is teaching how to pay the debts, towards the demigods and all. We are getting rains and all. So in the Govardhan Leela, when all the Vrajavasis were offering, to Govardhan, so Krishna tells them about the Karma Mimamsa philosophy. He begins with them. So I was just trying to correlate with what you are trying to tell is like demigods, we are getting something. So the Karma Mimamsa philosophy also says that just do your work, your karma, your prescribed duties, and you are definitely going to get it. So you don't have to pay anything. They are just the order suppliers. So they are just doing their duties. So you don't have to pay to them. It is their right to give it. So how as devotees we can understand and like that?
You just explained nicely. That is the Sat Darshan, Kama Mimamsa. Karma, the Mimamsa means conclusion. Just perform. You don't need to worship. You don't need devotion. You just perform your duties. The demigods are obliged to provide everything. So that's it. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you Prabhuji for inspirational class. Guruji, you were mentioning that Bhagavat Puran is Amalam and only Bhakti is described there. So I found that many verses there are, means in Bhagavatam 2nd canto also there is one verse. We describe that if you want heaven, you do this. If you want long life, you can do this. So these are the verses, some here and there. Also there is Falshruti also for hearing. So how somebody can, new person can ask that, how this Bhagavatam also gives.
That's very good that you found those verses. That indicates deep study of Srimad Bhagavatam. So there were many rishis and 64,000, I believe, from what I remember, sages assembled at Naimisharanya. So occasionally Shukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, Vyas Muni, they also mention some verses just to keep the interest of those who may not be at the level of pure devotional service at that time. So such verses are also included. However, it is Amal Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. Mahaprabhu's teachings are based on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada, he considered his greatest work was his Bhagavatam and his Bhagavatam purports. So that Tadbhag Bisharga Janataga Viplaman Jashmin Prodishlokam Abhadabatapi, even though there may be some even though there may be some discrepancies, but Tadbhag Bisharga, these words, which are Namani Anantasha Jashon Kintaniyat, simply meant to glorify his name, his qualities, his pastimes, his teachings. Srinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Shadava, these will be accepted by the saintly persons, Janataga Biplava, and will create a revolution in the sinful lives of the misdirected civilization. So Srimad Bhagavatam is always our predominant preaching platform. Thank you. Grantrad Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shamabeta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Shishi Nitai Gaur Shitanat Pramanandi Hari Hari Bol.